Good morning. Welcome to the Small Business Support Group. It's another week. It's Monday. Oh, yes, and it feels like a Monday as well. So, hello, welcome to Maz is here and Grant. Mark is busy prepping his calls for this week or something.
Sorry,
So, how is everybody?
My watch party.
Oh, here we go. Watch out.
Watch party. I always forget to do that. Let's do it.
Hang on.
Let's do it. Everybody do it.
Can you see if...
Oh, no, that's a question. Yes, you have. Nice. Yes, you have. There it is. Everybody do it. Oh! It's such a delay on Facebook. It's hilarious. I'm just doing mine now as well because I haven't done mine for some time. Even though I transmit to virtually every channel that I own, so which is quite amusing. So it's Monday. It's going to be a glorious week. I can tell you that's for nothing. We could
in the UK.
In the UK, of course. Sorry, yes. In the central of England, we could be seeing temperatures of 30 to 31 on Wednesday and Thursday. So it's going to be a warm one. So that's nice. It's good to have that. It is now everybody going back to normal and going back to work. Let's get the sun out. Maz, what are you talking about today?
So I will talk about the global economic collapse, which I think will kill more people than the virus itself.
Okay, I think we're just going to all jump in on that one, and that's how today is going to go. We may have a guest later on. It depends if we get him up in time. So, because it's an international guest. Oh,
wow.
Yeah, I know. So then, Maz, do you want to kick things off? Off you go.
Okay. So, good morning. Well, no, actually, good afternoon. It's 12:01 now. Good afternoon.
Every day.
Sorry. Yeah, good afternoon. Hope everybody's had a good weekend. What week are we on this lockdown? Is it 12, 13?
That could be 13. While you're talking, I will find out.
Oh, okay. All right. So today I'm going to talk about the global economic collapse, which will kill, I think, more people than the virus itself. You know, human suffering can come in the form of illness and death, but it can also be experienced as not being able to pay the bills or losing your home. If I look here in the UK and countries around us, small businesses in particular are struggling as supply chains dry up, leaving them without products or essential materials. I think it's time that the economists took over from the doctors before the real pandemic actually spreads. You know, to survive these shifts, the US, UK, and others will need to protect the future of their businesses, large and small, and look for opportunities to benefit from the new economic world order, not deny it. You know, ignoring these changes will be even more damaging than any flu pandemic. I then look at this from a global perspective, a global economic collapse, which, as I said earlier, will kill more people than this virus. Now, why do I say that? Well, I say that because I think poverty kills, hunger kills, depression kills, job loss kills, and that's the real global emergency. I mean, the virus's outbreak has decimated the world economy and threatens the life of millions around the globe who had been emerging from poverty. The economic devastation the pandemic wreaks on the ultra poor could ultimately kill more people than the virus itself. You know, the United Nations predicts that a global recession will reverse a 3-decade trend in rising living standards and plunge as many as 420 million people into extreme poverty, defined as earning less than, I think it was about $2 a day. And as for the 734 million people that are already there, the economic tsunami will make it harder for them to ever climb out. I mean, personally, I feel like we're watching a very slow motion train wreck as it moves through the world's most fragile countries. You know, hunger is actually already rising in the poorest parts of the world, where lockdown and social distancing measures have erased incomes and put even basic food items out of reach. I mean, take Pakistan, for instance. The villagers are begging for food along highways by waving pieces of white cloth at passing drivers. In India, the hungriest hang red flags from their homes in hope of donations. The poor are even poorer now, with loss of jobs and no money to put food on the table. I mean, it's been predicted that the coronavirus could push an additional 130 million people to the brink of starvation by the end of 2020. World Vision, for those who don't know, is an international Christian aid organization. They've warned that 30 million children are at risk of dying. And I want to stress that we're not only facing a global health pandemic, guys, but also a global humanitarian catastrophe. While the virus has already hammered many developed nations, which are now taking cautious steps to reopen their economies, it has yet to peak in many of the world's poorest countries, meaning that actually the economic devastation there could drag on longer. In many of the world's poorest places, the lockdown have proved more destructive than actually this virus itself. Experts have predicted, well, they predict that the pandemic will only exacerbate global inequality, which has risen in recent decades as top earners pull away from everybody else. Among other things, the gap between the haves and the have-nots is being reinforced by a growing digital divide as the pandemic drives more jobs online. At risk is actually 3 decades of progress. Since 1990, more than 1 billion people, just to put that into perspective, that's 13% of the world's population have risen out of extreme poverty. And that's according to the World Bank. We have lost a lot this year. And my question is, how will we get it back? While we have been very fortunate here in the UK to have had bread on the table, there are a lot of people who cannot. I mean, only last week, the UN officials increased the size of the coronavirus aid appeal from 2 million to 6.7, from 2 billion to 6.7 billion. And unless we take action now, we should be prepared for a significant rise in conflict, hunger, and poverty. People who were living in poverty and vulnerable before COVID-19 will be living in more poverty and will be more vulnerable. Because remember, the less you have, the longer it takes to recover. The climb back is just really steep and hard. And I hope the global nature of the pandemic will spark a new sense of empathy, I'd like to think. It just makes me really, really sad. And well, I don't think I've got the words to express how sad it makes me feel. So on that note, over to you, boys, and your thoughts on it.
I'll let Grant go first. Because I've got a question I'm going to ask, and Ian from Canada is just jumping in and out. He's just trying to get a better signal, and he just texted me a question actually to ask you. So I'll let Grant go first. Let's see if we can get Ian on as well.
Yeah, well, you started off, Maz, by saying that the economic issues will caused by COVID-19 will cause more deaths than COVID-19 would. I think this is such a sort of a big, important question that we'll only ever be able to know for sure in hindsight. When we've got all the data, and I think that it's easy to sort of point the finger, isn't it, at the moment, and suggest that overdoing lockdown will effectively cause more deaths than us taking a sort of was it Denmark who did which was the country now that did Sweden, sorry, the soft lockdown. Sweden. It's going to be a hindsight thing. I mean, my sort of perception of what's happened is that I keep kind of flip-flopping with having my opinion as to whether or not we've handled this in the right way. Because as a business owner, you can see the devastation that the lockdown has caused. you can see the fear that so many people are harbouring. And just while you were doing that, I did have a quick look on the Office of National Statistics just to see what the actual impact of the economy is in the stats that we can use. There are some interesting stats. I think from my perception, it's not as bad as it could have been. So one of the things that, and the Office of National Statistics is kind of my go-to, because you kind of got to have somebody you can trust.
Yeah.
And like you said, the Americans are really good at getting all their stats and sort of, you know, from what you can see in America, the lockdown really was only full on in a handful of states. You know, I had member of staff over in the States, and the lockdown was a lot less severe there than it was here. You know, life was a lot more, you know, straightforward. But here's a stat that could help us get some perspective on it. The percentage of businesses, this is UK Office of National Statistics website, okay? The percentage of businesses that responded to the survey as continuing to trade was from the 1st to the 14th of June, this is 84%. So in other words, 16% of businesses were closed during that period, that 2-week period, 1st of June to the 14th of June, which 16% is still horrendous. But given that retail is going to be, you know, booming, supermarkets have been booming.
Yep.
I think that's a lot better than it could have been. So putting that into perspective, you know, for my perception is that's not as bad as I expected. I don't know whether you guys think that's the same. And given that we're now in July, likely to see that increase quite a lot, it's going to be all about the actual revenue that they bring in. That's going to make the difference.
Talking about this type of thing, I mean, it literally, we just had a breaking news from the governor of Bank of England saying that the Bank of England saved the country from insolvency by stepping in, by putting that 100 billion in last week, and that's a statement he's just made. So, you know, you say that obviously America. I'm just going to bring Ian in. His connection keeps going up and down slightly, so we'll have to just bear with that. But I mean, we're saying about America. I don't think we know how bad things are in America, really. There's major issues regarding the virus is still taking hold there. The numbers are still going up. Death rates is not increasing, but the cases are. And I don't think we will see any effect yet in America of the economic side of things, because it's just weird. You know, I don't want to say that America is like Russia, but obviously there's some connections there. But it's the reporting is not very good, you know. And I think we're seeing a lot of the data that's coming out because we report everything here. I know the stats are great over in the States, but I don't think we'll see any major effect there or reported effect for some time yet. I don't think America will be straight for a year, really, of what I've been hearing over the weekend. So let me see if Ian, can you hear us out there? Oh, you're very quiet. Have you got a headset on? I think.
I can't hear him.
No, I can't hear you. I think you've got to say, you look great, Ian, but you can't hear you.
I've got some stats for you guys regarding the borrowing for UK that I think would be useful to throw in. So this is the country as a result of borrowing in May 2020. But borrowing, this is the UK government. The economy was provisionally estimated to be 55.2 billion. So that's roughly 9 times more than in May 2019. So in 12 months, we've gone from borrowing 5 billion to 55 billion in the space of 12 months.
Wow.
Now, to sort of caveat that, borrowing estimates are subject to greater than usual uncertainty because of their partial reliance on forecast data, with April 2020 being revised down by 13.6 billion to 48.5 billion. This is pounds sterling. This is largely because of a stronger than previously estimated tax receipts and national insurance contributions, along with lower than previously estimated expenditure on the furlough schemes. So they've spent less on furloughing than they thought they would.
Interesting.
So they spent less on it than they thought they would.
Yeah.
Wow.
So it's 48.5 billion.
I would have thought it would have been the other way round.
Yeah.
I know.
Because I've read that. I've read it in several papers where they said that they so that's quite interesting that they're actually saying.
I mean, that's it's like a 7 billion difference. But I think that just coming back to what you were saying, Maz, and sort of taking all that into perspective in our economy and our world and the way that's going to affect, first world countries, if you like.
Yeah.
What I always find to be quite odd is that we are literally closing down the world economy. We've closed down the world economy for a virus that is, although dreadful and we have got no cure for, not anywhere near as bad in comparison to what's happening in third world countries where you've got poverty, malnutrition, disease that's not treated, where the death rate would, from starvation is horrendous. And it just makes me think we're going to all this trouble and we've gone to all this huge effort and expense to save the lives of people that are vulnerable for COVID-19. And yet prior to this, on a daily basis, people are dying of just simple starvation all over the world. Yeah. And just a huge imbalance, isn't there, in the world, in the, that we would go to such a massive extent to save people from a disease when there's people literally dying of not eating enough. There's children dying every day of starvation. And it's a weird world, isn't it? It is a weird world where nobody sort of seems to bat an eyelid normally, getting on with our lives, eating our McDonald's and, doing what we do. And yet and the whole thing, I think, is emphasized. We've got the Black Lives Matter thing, as well, where we're sort of we're trying to raise awareness of discrimination and injustice, and Black Lives Matter is about was obviously kicked off by a death of an individual, and yet there's people dropping dead of starvation every day all over the world, and nobody seems to bat an eyelid about it, regardless of race, creed, or it doesn't. And I just think that the whole world seems to be bonkers at the moment.
It is. It's going crazy. I just hope out of this that we can put things into perspective.
Well,
I'd like to think so.
Yeah.
Well, I'd like to think so. We hope so, really. I mean, the World Health Organization has just released that yesterday was the highest one-day increase in cases ever, with 183,000 new cases worldwide. This is because obviously we're going towards the third world areas now, aren't we? This is the problem, and they have no. The health service is non-existent. There's no one governing correctly. They're not doing lockdowns, and it's just going to run rampant there, isn't it? And unfortunately, the death rate in those countries is going to be even higher because they can't deal with the simple health issues. So how they're going to deal with this when this grabs a massive hold, we don't know. In Brazil, 50,000 deaths, and that's that. It's. Brazil's fairly, I mean, there is parts of Brazil which is still have problems, but they've got a fairly decent health service. But as we go into the India, and then we go to Africa and that type of thing, that's where it's going to, and it's sweeping across the world. It is terrifying. These countries are going to get hit harder again. They struggle with poverty and all this anyway, and now they're going to get hit by this, and it's just going to wipe out.
I mean, that's what I meant, that they are already in poverty, so it will be more difficult for them because, like I said, the less you have, the longer it takes to recover. The climb back will be really steep and hard, and it makes you think. I mean, we have been so fortunate. The government has been so generous to us. Our government has been the most generous, I think. 80% on your furlough.
I think we're going to pay for it, though.
No, I know we have to pay for it, but we've not really had to worry where our bread and butter is going to come.
No, that is one thing, because they wanted to take into consideration regarding mental health, wasn't it? That was their most important thing, and they didn't want people to worry. And we said this at the start. By the way, this is week 14.
Oh, thank you, Matt.
This is the beginning of week 14 of the lockdown. I know it's eased now a little bit, but I think that was the most important thing at the start of this, that they didn't want people to worry about, where things are coming from. If they can't pay the mortgage, don't worry about it till October.
Take a break.
Take a break.
How generous was that?
It is phenomenal, and I know they've made mistakes, but I think they were learning on their feet. I think we can all say that they didn't have a structure in place. They should really have plans for pandemics, but I take it that there's a lot of stuff that popped up which they just didn't expect to deal with. But I think we've done all right. I think as I say, I think America's the one that's going to be. They're putting a massive front on. Trump is putting a massive front on there, and I think that's going to just collapse for them, unfortunately.
I can't believe we're in week 14. That's like over 3 months we've been.
How many shows have we done now, guys?
Yeah.
We start. I'll go back and I'll count them. Obviously, did we start in the second week of lockdown?
I don't know.
I think was it the third?
We're still about 70 odd now.
Yeah. Oh, yeah. We're over 70. We're definitely over 70.
We should have a party when we get to 100. Matt,
we might be able to now. We'll get the app and we'll be able to book into the Drum and Monkey. It'll be great. It'll be fun. We'll have a party there.
We can come. Do you want to share the picture? The
bar? Of my bar?
Yeah, Matt's got a bar in the garden now.
He said there's a small story about this, just to lighten the load slightly here. Okay. Our neighbour is just done loads of stuff in his garden, and he had 7 tons of dirt delivered, which was all on pallets. And then my wife said, "Oh, we'll have those pallets because we'll make something." She doesn't sound like that. That's just me. And so I think I'm going to make a bar, because it's actually, there's a thing on Facebook. There's loads of people making home bars while the lockdown has been happening. So I built this beauty.
Wow.
And it's two pallets. Well, it's 3 pallets actually, but it's 2 structural pallets. And I'm not a handyman at all. I'm not. I'm useless. But I really got into this on Saturday.
Looks amazing. Are you going to serve teas and coffees on that for me?
Yeah, I mean, I used it as a outside kitchen yesterday when I was doing a barbecue for Father's Day. So it's not just a bar. I mean, I did think about going to contact our good friend, Grant's good friend Mark, and get a barrel of his ale down, because I do have a hand pump still. So I was going to put it on there, but I thought that's only going to happen every so often. So it is part of my outside kitchen now. So because I enjoy cooking so much anyway. And it was great.
You enjoy cooking. You also enjoy eating.
Yeah, all right. Jesus. That would have been all pleasant and everything. That was a bit harsh. Anyway, guest.
Apologies, Matt. I'll leave that.
Don't worry. Thanks a lot. I'm not going to come back at you. I'm going to be nice. Ian unfortunately has lost signal. He can't be. They've got no Wi-Fi in the place is located. He's got a house by a lake, right in the middle of nowhere. And so we're going to bring him back on Wednesday, when he's going to drive into town to a Tim Hortons. Do you know what a Tim Hortons is? It's a coffee shop.
It's a coffee shop. We have one in Birmingham.
That's it. Yeah.
That's just down the road from where I am now.
That's it. Yeah, that's the one. But they're it's like Canada's Starbucks. And so he's going to drive there Wednesday morning and get some Wi-Fi and have a chat with us then. Because what he is, he flew out to Canada on Friday, and I heard last night that there was hardly anybody on the plane, and they were socially distancing on the plane. And I just wanted to know if that's how it went and how he felt safe and whatever. So he'll be back on Wednesday, and we'll have a chat with him then. and he's Canadian, so we can take the mickey out of him all day long, and he doesn't understand. So, well, we'll let Maz do that because she's a bit sharp at the moment.
Matt.
Well, you know, Grant, you got anything else to say? Have you got any other points you want to pick up?
Just picking up on what you've just said. My guy who works for me was stuck over in the States for some time during lockdown, and he came back last week, and again the plane was empty, and he was just able to sort of stretch out across a few seats and
that's
sleep.
the way.
I know.
It's the way to fly, that is.
That happened to me once when I was on a cruise, and it was at Christmas when we had all the snow, and we were the last plane that took off from Manchester Airport. We flew over to Barbados.
Yeah.
We did the cruise, but because none of the other planes made it, on the way back, the plane was empty because loads of people. And it's great. It's great flying on.
You feel special, don't you? You really feel special.
So air travel. There's some obviously some negatives, but there's some. You've got to take the pluses, haven't you?
Of course you do. I mean, you always find that in the States because I've flown internally lots in the States, and they are like buses when you fly internally in the States because because it's such a big country, and they fly just with a few people on board, but they just fly. They don't care. I think things will change slightly, but beforehand, it was when you do get an empty plane, you do feel very, very special. It's quite nice. So we've got comments in here. Here we go. Darren's put one up. One of the planes from Europe 2 weeks ago, from a pilot friend, was 80% full. No idea how they did social distancing. Well, I don't know how they're going to do it when it gets back in.
They're not going to do it because you can't do it. It's impossible.
You can't do it because you've got to think back and fun. Well, I was speaking to somebody about the cinemas, and I know I picked up on it last week, and he said, "Well, how are you going to do cinemas? Because you're going to have to do, even if it's 1 meter, all the way around that one person, if there's one person in there, back, front, sides, and how if you're in a row and there's only one of you in a row and there's somebody further, how are they going to get past you? Because it's not open either end, is it? In some cinemas, so." There's a lot of questions that are going to be asked, but we've heard that Johnson tomorrow night will be announcing the 1 meter, and so the pub's opening as well, and the restaurant's opening, which is fantastic. But you're going to have to book in. It feels like that's what they're going to do. You can't just wander into a pub or a restaurant anymore. You're going to have to book in to sit at the table. So that's all cool. I think we're coming up to half an hour now, so I think we've done it for today. I think. Anybody else want to add anything more? No?
I want to hear more about your party last night, mate, because you're talking about that bar being mainly for cooking and food.
Yeah.
Why have you got a hangover then, mate?
Oh, I don't know. Well, as you know, it was Father's Day, obviously, and we had we had a family who came to visit us, who we always celebrate Father's Day together, all socially distancing, all very good. Did play beer pong, and I feel that could have been a negative towards COVID. But anyway, it doesn't matter.
Your eyes are closed today, Matt.
They are. They're literally. I didn't drink too much. It was just a lovely day, and it was nice to have people in the garden, which was lovely, and cooking for everybody. It was fantastic. So thanks a lot to the Woodruffs who came across yesterday, and hopefully they haven't got sore heads. He's just bought a Tesla, so. He's doing well for himself. Model 3, yeah. And he said it's the best. He's not a tech person at all. He struggles to operate an iPhone, but he said it is the most amazing piece of technology he has ever bought.
I went to have a look at one on Saturday, actually, Friday. In fact, that could be worth just mentioning if we've got a little bit of time.
Carry on. Yeah,
I did a bit of retail experimentation, as you know, on Friday. And I went into Solihull to go and have a look at a Model 3, which they are amazing, absolutely amazing. But looking at the way they've got everything organised in retail now, so Touchwood is our sort of local shopping centre, very well organised, but it was still pretty quiet on the whole. Now I went in on Saturday as well. I was curious to see whether it was going to start getting busier, because there's no parking restrictions. It's all free parking at the moment. Now, normally on a Saturday, it'd be rammed in Solihull.
Yeah.
Still, I'd say that the parking was about 2/3 full. Appeared to be maybe 50 or maybe 50% full. I'd say 50%. And then walking round, it was quite busy. But I think that it made it feel busier because all of the shops are using social distancing and restricting how many people they have inside. There's a lot of sort of queuing systems going on. But I've got to say, you know, economy aside and all of that, it's such a much more pleasant experience going shopping on a Saturday when there's hardly anybody in the shop. You know, you go in and it's just nice and quiet and relaxed. And, you know, you can get parking. There's none of this hustle and bustle. You've got to appreciate it while you can because, of course, you know, but, you know, the shops aren't going to be able to survive.
No, they can't.
They're just, you know, unless they're making up for it with the online, it does make you wonder what's going to happen. It really does, because given that,
I think this 1 meter thing is going to help them, though, isn't it? I feel.
Well, what I'm trying to get my head around is, at the moment, there's no reason not to go shopping because you can follow the guidelines, you can wear your face mask. Certainly in Solihull, people are pretty respectful. Mostly they're respecting the social distancing. So although you might be, you know, adding a little bit to your risk, it's not exactly dangerous from what I can see, you know, going shopping. And yet people still aren't. You know, they're still it's not nowhere near back to normal. Okay, the restaurants aren't open. You know, what I'm wondering is this now the shape of things to come?
Grant, have you noticed all the eateries have closed though? I did go into Touchwood, but I went into Selfridges and like Costa's closed, Pret closed. No, not Pret, Eat. It was Eat actually. Eat. So many eating places. And I know what you're saying.
They're not open yet though. They're not allowed to open yet.
They are.
Oh,
for takeaway.
Oh, for takeaway, yeah.
For takeaway, but they've just completely closed because
I think it might be, Maz, because if their unit doesn't allow one in, one out sort of a queuing system.
Oh, okay.
I think if they can't have a sort of way of, so I went to TK Maxx on Friday and they've got like a queuing system outside that's all cordoned off. That's a bit like, you know, when you go to Alton Towers or Disney or whatever. And they've got like a one in, one out. So they've got 2 inch. So if you haven't got a double entrance, you know, space where people can have enough room for the social distancing.
Yeah.
I'm guessing that's why some of them didn't do it.
Yeah, that makes sense. Okay. Yeah.
The thing that shocked me the most was that street food place. So in the centre, it's outdoors. There's an enclosed sort of barriered off area where there's a load of street food vendors and tables and chairs. And they've got a guy on the door taking, getting people in, taking reservations for seats, so you can reserve your seats. And you go to the street food vendor, you get your food, and then you go and sit down. And it's the only restaurant style thing that I've seen. Whether that is, I mean, it's obviously supported by the council. You know, they've obviously approved it. It does appear to be, you know, stretching it a bit. In terms of, you know,
well, it is, I suppose, sitting down. Yeah, but it is officially outside, isn't it? That's the thing.
Yeah, but wow, you know, a bit of normality.
Yeah,
it is nice. I mean, it is amazing. I mean, obviously, I went to B&Q on Saturday to get the bits to build that bar, and I did take a picture of the queue, which is behind us and not in front of us. Hang on a minute. And it is amazing how the British are always good at queuing anyway. But how quickly we just get used to how this system works, and how queuing and everybody quite calm. That's a better picture. I mean, it was a big queue, and we had to stand in about 20 minutes to get in. But it's amazing how we've just fitted into this whole system of, you know, standing 2 meters apart in the queue and walking along, and everybody was.
But when you got in there, Matt, was it quiet?
Yes.
Yeah.
It was, because they were only letting so many people. Everybody had to have a trolley, which was interesting. Everybody had to have a trolley. So, and that course automatically gives you that distancing from the other person in front of you, which is quite good. But it was a strange experience. And are we going to get used to it for long term? I don't know. We'll see what Johnson says tomorrow night. Hopefully, we'll know a little bit more in the daytime before he makes an announcement. But this could be the change now, people, and we could be and this could be the way it's going to be for a year. That's the thing, the way he's going to set it out now, until at least we get a vaccine or some kind of cure. Okay, then that's it. We shall return tomorrow. Thanks for joining us today. Thanks to Maz. Thanks to Grant. And we shall see you tomorrow at midday. See you then. Bye-bye.